listen, we could sit here for hours on end and argue what is the right number of teams that belong in the college football playoff. 4, 8, it should have been 8. It was always 8. 8 was the right number. 12, 24. But at this point, it's kind of just a moot argument. It's like arguing that the national championship should be moved from Monday to Saturday. Okay, don't watch the national championship and then see what happens. But you know you're going to, so you might as well just embrace the fact that we are going to 12 teams. But with 12 teams being represented in the playoff, how many come from the SEC? More importantly, how many should come from the SEC, and one that everyone can kind of agree on going into the not-so-distant future? Let's go ahead and discuss SEC Unfiltered. It's Cole Thompson here. Make sure that you like the video, hit the ring notification. That way you don't miss a single episode. And make sure that also you hit subscribe, because we're talking college football every single day leading up to week 1 and well throughout whatever this chaotic 2024 season is. Make sure that you follow us on all the social media channels: TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at SEC Unfiltered. Follow me on my own YouTube channel at Mr. Cole Thompson, and on social media at Mr. Cole Thompson. Download the podcast version of the show. Leave a 1-star review if you hate this type of content. Leave a 5-star review if you love this type of content. And to make sure that you're keeping up with everything that we're doing every single day covering the #1 conference, visit SECUnfiltered.com. This episode's brought to you by RHOBACK. Use promo code SECU for 20% off all joggers, polos, hoodies, and shorts. Promo code SECU at RHOBACK.com for 20% off. There is going to be a difference about how many teams should be represented and how many teams will be represented. And the argument here is that what is fair for college football, that way everyone is included. Because you got to remember, we're not taking the 12 best teams. We're taking the 12 most qualified teams, because there are going to be outliers, like having a group of 5 school in the mix, like having a conference champion in the mix. And that doesn't always correlate to best record, best programs, best strength of schedule, best overall rosters, who are the most competitive. It just means that you met certain criteria, and look at that. You crossed off a box. Everyone is included. But when it comes to the SEC, there's going to be an argument about how many teams should be represented to where everyone is on board. And I think that there is a simple number here. I think 5 easily is the number that you want to go with. And let me go ahead and explain. It's not just for the fans of the SEC, that the conference where it just means more. It's for college football seniority and also for sanity in general. You got to realize that at still this moment, Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey kind of are running things behind closed doors. It's like back in the 1920s when the mafia were kind of controlling things back in New York City. They had a gauge on everything that was going on, and things kind of went through them. And if things don't go their way, well, then they're going to mix some stuff up and go ahead and make it to where it is in their favor. So let's just say that everyone says 3 teams is the right number. And so 3 teams come in from the SEC, then 3 teams come in for the Big 12, Big 10. And then you take 2 teams from the Big 12, 2 teams from the ACC, and then 2 at-large bids. Notre Dame gets 1 in the group of 5. Well, do the 2 teams from the ACC truly belong in the playoff when you look at, I don't know, 10-2 Texas A&M roster one year that was able to go toe-to-toe with several out-of-conference games that were really prominent? What about a 10-2 Tennessee squad that lost on a game-winning field goal to Georgia that was undefeated, but you go pair them up against, say, I don't know, like an Arizona at 9-3, but they were second place in the Big 12, so we give them representation. Well, Tony Petitti is not going to be okay with that, and neither is Greg Sankey, because if they want the most power, because if they bring in the most eyeballs and the most revenue. So they're going to go ahead and say, no. What we're going to do is we're going to go create our own conference. Screw you, NCAA. By the way, you, and you from the ACC and the Big 12, you can come to the party and just tell everyone else, piss off. We don't care. And that's a possibility that could happen. But the other thing that could happen is, let's just say the SEC gets 7 teams in the playoff. So this upcoming year, when you look at the preseason rankings according to FanDuel, let's just go with Georgia, Alabama, Texas. I'll throw Missouri in. We could throw Ole Miss in. Let's just throw Tennessee into the conversation, and surprise, surprise, LSU. And those 7 teams, based off of what we know with preseason odds, they end up making the college football playoff. Because of, even though they don't play more than 8 conference games, they're the best of the bunch. Well, what's going to happen is, it's like when you give a mouse a cookie, he wants a glass of milk, and then he wants to take over the world, and then eventually he blows everything up, and we're just left in the waste. You're going to have to expand. It's a but clause and clause and clause. When I was in improvisation classes for doing theater, everyone said, when you are improving, you just go with the flow. So it's kind of like that with the postseason. You add in 7 teams from the SEC. Well, that's not fair. The Big 12, Big 10, they want at least now 4. So now that's 11 teams in. And then at that point, well, only one squad can be like, well, now we got to go to 16. Well, then 16, then someone's going to complain about the SEC not having more representation. So then we got to go to 24. And then lowly, as we already are talking about, the regular season doesn't matter. There are people out there that truly are starting to buy into the notion, well, the regular season doesn't matter anymore. And it shouldn't because, well, all we got to do is just get to 10-2 and we're in the playoff. And especially when you get to 24 teams or 32 teams, well, at that point, then you're really going to have a conversation about players opting out in the middle of October and just waiting to get to the postseason. Or the crazy thing, and it's going to happen, and we've already seen it happen, Jags-Njigba back in 2022, Ohio State still is cursing his name a little bit. He opted out of the playoffs. What if that becomes the norm? We're at the playoff and the national championship and what you fought for during the regular season, it's just kind of on the back burner. So you have to make sure that there's a fair number. 7's too many. 3 is too low. Why 5? Well, what 5 does is it guarantees you that potentially you are going to eventually see the SEC expand to 9 conference games. Because they're just sitting here around and going, well, you know what? Well, we're going to wait until this actually affects us. We'll go to 9, but if we go to 9, you are going to at least throw one 9-3 squad in there because of, let's just say, on any given Saturday, Texas draws Georgia, LSU, and Tennessee. And all of them are ranked in the preseason top 10. Well, at that point, Texas still is good enough because if they have a good non-conference schedule, shouldn't they belong in the conversation? The same thing goes for a Texas A&M, a Florida. You could throw a South Carolina, a Missouri in the mix. We'll do that. But if we stay at 8 games, well, then what that means is we're going to have at least probably 1 undefeated or maybe 2 11-1 squads and a bunch of 10-2 squads. You're still going to allow the 10-2 to be considered better than everyone else that's 10-2 in the ACC. Or the 10-2 at the American Conference, or the 10-2 in the Sun Belt, or the 10-2 in the Big 12. And that's also fair because here's a stat that everyone needs to know. What do Florida, Mississippi State, Georgia, Kentucky, Auburn, Alabama, Oklahoma, Tennessee, and Texas all have in common besides the fact that they play in the SEC? Oh, don't worry. I'll give you a minute. If you guess that they are in the top 10 toughest schedules of 2024, congratulations. Come claim your prize. That's why the SEC has the bias around it. Because if they play the toughest schedules, they play the most invigorating matchups, they play against the highest quality opponents, and they don't want to be penalized for it. People complained for years on the outside saying, well, the SEC doesn't schedule great non-conference games because their conference games are not a cakewalk. It's like stepping on magma and then eventually going and finding a pack of Legos and just continuing the pathway to Atlanta. That's it. That's why the SEC doesn't have 9 conference games and then a rigorous out-of-conference schedule. Because at that point, who's it helping? It's only hurting them. The SEC is cannibalizing itself year in and year out. And so because of that, if you want to make sure that you add in an extra game, then you go ahead and you say, well, we'll take a 9-3 squad. And you can't say that the records are the same because of you're not taking a 9-3 Tennessee and saying, oh, they're going to lose to an 11-1 Kansas squad because the records say that they're that different. Is quality of play the exact same in the Big 12 as it is in the SEC? I don't think so. Is it the same in the ACC as it is in the Big 10? I don't think so. Is it the same in the SEC as it is in the Sun Belt Conference? Good God, no. So why are we going to use that against it? With 5, what it does is it guarantees you that the SEC is going to play nice with the other conferences. What it also guarantees you is that, yes, eventually we are going to go from 12 teams to 14 teams. Go ahead and enjoy these 2 years of wonder before we eventually make more changes to college football, which is absolutely egregious. But what it will do is it will also guarantee you that as of right now, 5 is good enough for Greg Sankey. 5 is good enough to say, well, Missouri gets in, Ole Miss gets in, Texas gets in, Alabama gets in, and let's just say Georgia gets in this year. Yeah, we're okay with that because there's still at least a 35 to 45% shot we will be in the national championship. And I like those odds a little bit better. 5 is still the most compared to the Big Ten getting maybe 3 and the ACC getting 1 and the Big 12 getting 1 and Notre Dame sticking in. And then you throw a Memphis or a Tulane or maybe a Texas State or a James Madison in every few years or a Boise State. Yeah, we're okay with that because still we have the highest representation. We have the highest revenue of money. And because of that, look at where we are. We played the toughest schedule and we're being rewarded for the fruits of our labor. And anybody in the Big Ten that's calling SEC biased because this is an SEC channel, number one, welcome to your audience. That's a big difference here. And number two, do you know what the average strength of schedule is for the SEC this year? 9. Do you know what the average strength of schedule is for the Big Ten this year? 29. A 20-point differential. There are teams in the Big 12 and the ACC that have a more rigorous pathway toward their postseason than the Big 10. So yeah, Tony Petitti may be bringing in a lot of money for the conference. And yes, you're bringing in 2 exceptional programs and 2 potential on-the-rise programs. But that does not mean that you are in the same striking distance right now as the conference, where its slogan is, it just means more. So when you get more, you need more representation. To me, when you get in 5, what you're saying is, we're content with the current status of college football. Now, is that going to be the right number when everything is said and done? I don't know. Is it going to be more than 5? I don't know. Am I okay with it being more than 5? Absolutely. The conference absolutely deserves a lot of praise. But with 5, what you're doing is you're promising yourself, you know what? We are in good standing. And more importantly, we're okay with the trajectory of where college football is. But let me know in the comment section down below, how many teams from the SEC should be in the college football playoff every single year? Is it 5? Is it 7? Is it all 12 teams? Do you want to see the SEC create its own super conference with the Big Ten, join forces with like Oklahoma State and a few other programs, just call it a day? And also make sure that you hit subscribe. Make sure that you're following us on all the social media channels. Follow me on my own YouTube channel at Mr. Cole Thompson and on my own social media platforms at Mr. Cole Thompson. Leave a 1-star review on the podcast forum, wherever you get your podcast listening systems. If you hate this type of content, leave a 5-star review if you love this type of content and you love this type of content. And of course, make sure that you're following us every single day covering the #1 conference at SECUnfiltered.com. Until next time, fans, I'm Cole Thompson. Later.